Hello, students. How are we doing today? So we're here in APUSH, APUSH Unit 1. This is still part of Period 1 or Time Period 1. Um, and so that will cover 1491 to 1607. And this is Lesson 5. And today we're talking about evolving world views. So we're going to talk about contacts among American Indians or Native Americans, Africans, and Europeans, challenged worldviews of each group. So we're going to start to see how worlding views conflict with one another. And so that's the direction that we're going in this class or today's lesson. So we know we have this idea of changing relationships. Or we have these changing relationships. We have views that are different. We know that when we think of as you can see here, the three components of the triangle trade, we have the Americas in the dark blue, Europe in the light blue, and yellow is Africa, and we know that we have these different viewpoints of society, social, political, economic views, cultural views are different, but we know that in with the triangle trade, the Columbian exchange, and some of the views, Europeans tend to look at everyone else in the triangle trade, all the other two regions in the triangle trade, as inferior people that live there. They don't follow the same ideology as Europeans, so they look down upon them. So the relationships are definitely different. The assumptions that we can look at is the Europeans assume because people from Africa, people from the Americas don't follow Catholicism or Christianity, and for the Spanish and Portuguese, Catholicism, that they're less human. The Europeans look at them as barbaric, looking them as only slave labor, looking them as uneducated, uncivilized. But we know when we think of some of the early ancient civilizations, whether it be in Africa or the Americas, that they are quite educated, they are quite civilized. But once again, it is a different type of civilization than what the Europeans are used to. So therefore, they look at them as less than human, so to speak. So when we think of that, we gave you two readings, also a Venn diagram that goes over Sepulveda and De La Casas. Now, the unique thing is both of these individuals, De La Casa and Sepulveda, they are both in the ministry. They are from Spain, and they both are going to use the Bible as something to defend their ideology or their philosophy about the indigenous people. Now, Bartholomew de las Casas, he believes that the indigenous people are more civilized than what we give them credit for, that they are have an education, that they are more of an equal, that they're not this less than human. He tries to pass laws to restrict them being put into slavery, but the Spanish aren't really the monarch isn't going to really buy into that avenue. Um, his ideas are definitely going to encourage that idea of the black legend, that the black legend treats the indigenous people so horribly. But he's really going to try to push for that when he talks about the indigenous people. He's more I wouldn't say upbeat or positive, but he looks at the indigenous people as being more of an equal setting. Where Sepulveda is once again going to use the Bible to essentially say that indigenous people are less than human, they're inferior, they only should be used for slaves or be subservient to the Spanish, and really kind of um, show that they're just less than what the Europeans are. They don't deserve to be on the same level as they are, and that Europeans are far superior, and we should be controlling and taking advantage and mistreating these barbaric people. But once again, both are essentially using the Bible for their ideology. But unfortunately, for De las Casas, his his sentiment, his push to try to pass changes in laws and all that, and aren't going to they're going to fall on deaf's ear. Like they're just not going to be heard really. And we could see such an example of that as when we think of more civilizations and we think of more conquistadors. Um, European attempt to change the American Indians' beliefs, religion, gender roles, family relationships, all those kinds of things, and they're met with resistance. And we see conquistadors like Juan de Onate, who he's a conquistador in what we would consider like Arizona, Nevada, the southwest of the United States. Now he's actually married to Cortez, Cortez's daughter, I should say, not married to Cortez, but married to Cortez's daughter. And you remember Cortez had conquered the Aztecs. He put terrible cruelty on the natives and just uh, wasn't really nice to the indigenous people, and that falls in line with the Black legend. Now, as we continue and we see that after 1588, after the Spanish Armada had lost, we see the British that are gaining strength in exploration, and the French are following along. We can see that we know the Spanish control the Southwest here and in Florida, and St. Augustine here in Florida, which is Jacksonville, Florida. That's their first main colony set up in Florida there, or well, modern day Florida. But you can see all along the East Coast will be in the pink here is the British. Then you could see in blue where France established forts and towns and colonized. And then you could see up here by the Hudson Bay, Newfoundland, um, and up just north of Boston, you'll see areas that are striped where both the British and French are there. And once again, if we remember, we had talked about the different relationships that like the French and the British had with the indigenous people. This area just north of Boston, the New England area here, this area is going to be kind of the areas and locations that we will eventually see um, the Spanish or the French and Indian War, or from those of you from AP Euro, the 7 Years' War. So up in the Northeast, in this region up here, is where you will see kind of in 1754 that war beginning. So here's a picture of the St. Augustine. It's the first established Spanish empire in North America. The first British successful colony will be Jamestown in the Chesapeake Bay, and that will eventually Jamestown is a joint stock company. But once again, we will see that more and more colonies are going to be established in modern day United States of America after the 1600s. Now, we know that with the Spanish, we know came the church. So, throughout Latin America and even in Florida and the Southwest, you will still see uh, structures that still have that Spanish flair from bringing the Catholic Church. Even today, in the 21st century, you still see a flair of Spanish architecture in housing and buildings, just as if you would go to the Northeast in what is modern day Boston or New England area, you still see some of the architecture have the influence of the British Empire. So those things you see kind of I wouldn't say all over, but you do see the influence of European architecture in America or the Americas still today. Now, we know that with Sepulveda and the Black Legend, they've always treated and looked at the indigenous people as being less than human. But in North America, modern day United States, in the Southwest, we see like in Arizona and Nevada, we see the Pueblo Revolt in 1680. Now, this Pueblo Revolt, also known as Pope's Rebellion, puts the Pueblo Indians versus the Spanish. The Pueblo push out the Spanish in 1680. They win the Pueblo Revolt. Unfortunately for them, with the help of Onate, the conquistador, they defeated the Pueblo and took the land back in 1692. But they had 12 years without the Spanish. Now, we are going to see the views of the Spanish towards the indigenous people start to change a little bit. We are going to see that um, it's sort of like when you stand up for yourself against a bully, and the bully now starts to respect you a little bit. That's what we're going to see here. We're going to see this kind of idea start to develop. The Spanish still are controlling them, but we start to see the respect or the treatment of the indigenous people slightly change for the better for the indigenous people. Now, we also are asking you on in your resource guide to um, look at writing your first introductory paragraph, or to practice your first introductory paragraph for the um, for class. So in your resource guide, we're going to ask you to write for your introduction and and practice your thesis. Practice your the ideologies of religion, trade, and technology. So, with the dawn of the 16th century, there came together in Europe both the motivation and the means to explore and colonize territory across the seas. Discuss this statement with reference to two of the following. So, when we think of religion, trade, and technology, so we know that there's various religions had the desire to find safe places for to freely practice their faith. So we know that whether it's the Protestant Reformation or the Catholics, we see the ideas being spread. We see in the northern part of Britain, religion is a big part of the culture there. Spain, we know because of the requiremento, that's a big part of their culture and religion. Okay, so that is not uncommon. Like religion is a big push, and especially for the British and the French. We know when it comes to trade, we know trade requires new secure routes to obtain the riches from Africa, Asia, India, right? We don't want to go through the Ottoman Empire. We don't want to go through Italy or the Middle East. We know Portugal wants to develop new trade routes to Africa, Asia, India, South Africa. Columbus is going to try to find a water route across the Atlantic. So we also know that there's going to be this renewed slave trade with the Portuguese and the Spanish. So trade is going to be vitally important. And then we know that technology is too also very important. The invention of the printing press helped spread ideas across Europe. Technology saw advances during the Renaissance, made improvements. We saw uh, print in things from Chinese and the Arab nation. We saw the development of sailing compasses, map making, gunpowder, the sextant, the astrolabe. We saw these developments of technology that are going to help with the expansion of 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 exploration. So, um, so if you could take the time to work and write that introduction in your resource guide, that would be awesome. We'll actually in class we will talk about that introduction. All right. Well, thanks for spending time with me, and we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you, and have a great day.